Let me tell you just a little bit about Cheryl before she tells her story. She's a designer, an author, a theologian. And while anybody who has had a career of any length, there are many, many accomplishments that a person can be credited with. It's safe to say that the arc of her career has been her relentless advocacy for diversity, equity, and inclusion for Black designers. Cheryl actually credits her own journey not with her really seminal work that she published first in 1987, but actually it goes back to Dorothy Jackson's article, The Black Experience in Graphic Design, from 1968. This is not a new conversation, but it's a conversation, as I said, it's time for a reckoning. It's time to actually deal with this issue and not just talk about it. And so 35 years ago, in 1987, Cheryl brought this up with her essay in print that was titled Black Designers, Missing in Action. In 2016, she wrote a follow-up in print, Black Designers, Still Missing in Action? And this year, in the wake of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and too many other tragedies, she completed her trilogy in print, exploring this question of race in design from a lot of angles. And she actually passes the baton to the next generation of designers. Black Designers, Forward in Action is a must-read at printmag.com. And in fact, one of the 7 Black designers you should know, we do know, because Shani Sandy is one of us. Cheryl holds a Master of Science degree in Visual Communications from Pratt, and she received her BFA from the Maryland Institute College of Art, with foundation studies completed at the Rhode Island School of Design. She also, incredibly, holds a Master's of Divinity degree from the Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Her personal work and archives were acquired by Stanford University Libraries. As you will come to find out, Cheryl actually knows IBM very well. Cheryl, welcome. I really, truly can't wait to hear you share your personal experiences with us today. Everybody, welcome Cheryl D. Holmes Miller.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am beyond honored to be before you today. I want to thank the team and Mr. Hammond for referring me and allowing my voice, hopefully to make a difference in your charge of excellence and equity as we move forward. I whispered to my husband the other morning, he says, "Are you ready to talk to IBM?" And I said, "My dear, I have never, ever told this story." I said, "You don't even know this story." And I married my high school sweetheart. I've been with him since 16 years of age, and he does not know this story. I told him the other morning. This story is our story. And as I said, I've never revealed this. This is the story of my deepest desire and my prayer every day. My thought for us today is IBM privilege is privilege. Pass it on, pay it forward. Is this beautiful? This is the Keynote Bowl by Herbert Crenshaw. It was launched in 1953. It won a gold medal design award in Milan in 1954. Mid-century minimalist. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's found in countless Danish and international design homes. And the Crenshaw idea was to make a beautiful bowl an original minimalist design, just a less is more bold, elegant. This bowl and I are the same age. I have lived with this bowl my entire life. This was my mother's black Keynote bowl. In fact, spare change, thimbles, bobby pins, keys, it sat on her kitchen table. The Keynote bowl was very unique. And these were Mommy's bowls. There's Mommy behind me. Mints, hard candy, mixed nuts, the Keynote bowl. Uniquely, we weren't Danish. We were Danish West Indian. My grandmother was indigenous Danish and Ghanaian Creole from now the regarded Carnival cruise stop, the U.S. Virgin Islands. She was a perfumier, a duty-free Main Street retailer. Granny sent Mommy the bowl. It found its way to Washington, D.C., my dad's hometown. From the Danish once-owned St. Thomas storefronts to my daddy's country and land and heritage. Locate me, please. I am a mid-century baby boomer, and who would know, a little black, Negro-colored girl growing up during the Civil Rights era with a Danish high-end minimalist mid-century modern bowl sitting on Mommy's kitchen table. Picture that. Little did I know, at the same time, Paul Rand designed the IBM logo, 1956. Rand distilled the principles of modernism into the very theories of his design aesthetic. Less is more, the balance of form and function, setting the well-established tone of international design that would champion the aesthetics of corporate identity and a universal language of visual communication. Developed from the Bauhaus, Rand's own identity became a brand, his name, and IBM became synonymous with this modernist approach to graphic design, coupled with the international typographic style and grid system in Switzerland. Now we are confronted with 2020 cries to decolonize this design academy. By 1971, I entered sophomore year of college design, the place of claiming your major and starting off. I started at Rhode Island School of Design. My father died 2 weeks before my sophomore year, and I found myself back in the mid-Atlantic from Providence, a pivot, a quick turn of a dime. I needed to get back to my mother, who was widowed with 2 teens. I entered MICA 1971 into their sophomore year of design. Modernism, Bauhaus, IBM, and Paul Rand made its way to North American Design Academy canon. There was no room for anything else. How could I not agree wholeheartedly? My Mommy's bowl was my design DNA. What Black kid would have ever known Danish modernism to recognize it in sophomore design school education? But Cheryl D. Miller had a dream. She knew the bowl. My whole life, it sat on Mommy's kitchen table. I want to work for IBM. There's nothing else I wanted to do but to work for IBM. I saw it in the classroom. I saw it in the aesthetic. I saw it in Mr. Rand's work. I saw it in the Design Academy. I had seen it my whole life. I want to work for IBM. It would be a privilege, my deepest desire. I never told anyone. My wildest dream and prayer. I want to work for IBM. It's a privilege. It's a privilege of excellence. It's a privilege of access. And I saw it. In 1982, I found myself in New York City, having had 10 years of broadcast experience. This was my chance to break away from the new media of television and its moving and advancement. I even had a job offer for ABC television to enter into New York. I turned it down. I said, I want to try to work for IBM. If I could just design a publication for my IBM, I'd have it made. Smooth sailing, a mark of excellence, an IBM publication in my portfolio to be a corporate designer for IBM was all I wanted, all the way from my mommy's kitchen Danish bowl. I tried. I applied. I tried. I applied. I tried. I applied. No door would open. Shut. Sealed. Locked. There was no place for a racially ambiguous Black young woman in New York City who knew all about the Danish bowl to design with that modernist Swiss system. I was pushed to open my own firm. There was no door open for me to get a career at IBM. So I'm a persistent thing. I said to myself, let's tackle this another way. If I could get one IBM publication, that mark of excellence, I can make it. So if I can get a contract from IBM, if I can get one piece in my firm's portfolio, if the mark of acceptance and excellence, all I wanted was one IBM publication. So I started making sales calls. Oh, Armonk, Purchase, New York City. If I made one, I had a little BMW. I pulled it out of the garage. If I drove from New York City to Armonk once, it was a dozen times over the length of my firm in sales. I want a piece of work from IBM. A contract will do it. I even leased a company car to drive to the corporate parks in Connecticut and New York. The dream now, just one piece of IBM business. It will set me apart. Just one IBM publication. Can I have, please? Okay, no job. Let's change the dream. A piece of IBM business, a contract. After years of knocking on IBM's door, I got no access. Nothing. A dream deferred. Langston Hughes says it this way. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust or sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. And if you've seen those who are in drama of the word with Langston Hughes' dream deferred poem, it ends out, or does it just explode? A dream deferred. All I got was a dream deferred. But I got IBM sponsored work, and I had the aesthetic. I had the bowl. I am a good designer. I took the nutrition. I used it anyway, in my lifestyle, in my home, in all of the work that I did get. We're award winning. It was the aesthetic, the excellence that I couldn't use for IBM, but I used for every place that would receive me, and all of our national African American publications and corporate communications defining the civil rights era. And one of my favorite clients was IBM sponsored. John Akers, in essence, sponsored the Joint Center for Political Studies, and I got sponsored IBM work for African American organizations, a dream deferred. By 1987, I started writing about this injustice. After all, I know my design. I know my aesthetic. I have mommy's bow. I just wanted a chance to. And I started writing. I knew IBM would never happen for me. And I started writing about the racial injustices of exclusionary design industry. By 1990 and 91, AIGA began its D&I task force, and forums were inspired by my writing, my thesis, and my advocacy to tackle the problem. Rand is in his IBM career heyday. He's teaching at Yale, and since the late 1950s, the Yale program had been a bastion of modernist theory, and Rand was its key voice. Alvin Eisenman retires as chair in 1993. I'm writing, let us in, let us in. This is not equal, this is not fair. Sheila DeBretmont takes over and purports boldly and prophesies, diversity and inclusion are our only hope. It is not possible to plaster everything over the clean elegance. Dirty architecture, fuzzy theory, and dirty design must also be out there, she writes. Rand and his friend Armin Hoffman, acclaimed Yale professors, resigned from the factory in protest. DeBretmont says, I will never, never, never forget to include people of color, people of different points of view, people of both genders, people of different sexual preferences. It's just not possible anymore to move without remembering that is something that modernism didn't accept for us. It didn't want to recognize regional and personal differences. Paul, in protest, resigns from Yale. In 1994, I'm still hoping that I can configure a way to become an IBM. Can you believe that? I called Paul Rand and I said, can I interview you? 1994, I once again pulled my little BMW out of the garage and I drove to Wilton, Connecticut. And I had an interview with Mr. Rand 4 years before his passing. I was hoping to find a secret access door to this place of privilege and design excellence. For becoming, he was disturbed when I met him. He was feeling bashed and he was feeling antiquated. He cried for the aesthetic to be maintained and that the computer was moving too fast for us as designers to think and that his design theories could be lost. He gave me a history lesson on his modernist aesthetic. He gave me a test that I failed. All I knew was mommy's Danish red bow. One last quest to discover how could I qualify to be included and accepted into this family of privilege. I walked out with no new revelation. I wasn't 6'3" tall Anglo-Scandinavian man who found his way to IBM executive leadership roles with a privilege of power and position. My dream was deferred. I was a little 5'2", racially ambiguous, what are you, black child? Just knowing mommy's minimalist, award-winning bowl. The bowl and I are growing old together. Time passed. It was time to raise my family. I paused. I said, I've done my work. Maybe. We'll put the dream on pause. I want a family. Christmas party, barbecue, corporate wife, Christmas party, Santa after Santa, corporate picnics, Honey, can you come pick me up from my job? MasterCard. Irony, MasterCard purchased New York, had purchased the IBM headquarters as its corporate headquarters. I raised my kids on an IBM campus and architecture, the narthex, the glass. Is this a life's joke? Leather sofas, air to breathe, clean lines, a privilege just to walk the hall for a breath of fresh air on an overwhelming day. 10 years of raising my kids in the IBM design headquarters, now owned by MasterCard. Then life would have it. Exit 28 on the Merit. Every morning, I take my daughter to school. I pull off the Merit, exit 28, the light stops. I sit there and wait so that I can make my left turn to go down into Westchester. And what is before me? The entrance to MasterCard, the IBM campus. There it is, every morning. Husband has gone on to the next job. 10 years I raised my kids, barbecues, Santas. Honey, come meet me for dinner, pick me up. Now, taking my kid to high school, I stand at the light every morning, exit 28, and I look at MasterCard, but all I see is IBM architecture and campus excellence. I'm looking at the aesthetic. I'm looking at Mommy's Danish Bowl, an IBMer without benefits. The kids, I had them back to back late because I was involved in all of this, and it was time for college touring. Close together, my daughter got to journey with my son, the family trips from Maine to Virginia, all of the top colleges along the Eastern Corridor. 95, college after college. My daughter in the back seat with big brother's college touring. She would be next. It was her turn for college touring. D1 soccer, D3 soccer, women's college. I add on to the list of colleges for her. Mount Holyoke, Simmons, Smith, and of course, Vassar. Remember the bowl now, the IBM aesthetic. Imagine my home. I always tell my kids, if I should die before I wake, just call Sotheby's, just call Christie's, no tag sale, the aesthetic at Mommy's Bowl, every corner of the house is less is more. The aesthetic, the excellence, we breathe it in my lifestyle. I've raised it with my kids. It is who I am. It is what I know. And I was never given a chance at IBM. Years of Christmas parties, barbecues, picking up dad. Exit stops. It's time to take my daughter to college tour too. Vassar. I'm thinking, okay, Vassar. Smith, Mount Holyoke, women's soccer, Vassar. Design excellence. We travel to Poughkeepsie. When I get to Poughkeepsie, there are 3 colleges there. And I say, okay, let's start at the top, and we'll work our way down to Vassar, right back to the highway, and back to Connecticut. 3 colleges in Poughkeepsie. We start at the top. We started Bard. And, of course, the soccer coach was interested in my daughter. We're there. Next stop would be the second school. We pull into the campus, and all the time in my head, I got to get my kid to Vassar. That's where we're going, women's colleges, on top of what she already experienced with her brother. We stop the second school. We breathe air. She looks around. Mom, this is it. And I'm like, wait a minute. We haven't gotten to Vassar. Mom, this is it. First choice, early decision. This is it. I'm like, oh, how could it be it? We haven't gotten to Vassar. Early decision, Mom, this is it. What did she see? What did she feel? What was home all of a sudden? The first trip out, we planned we're going all over. The first school you see? The college IBM built. The IBM design aesthetic. Marist College. I couldn't believe it. First school out to look. I just absolutely couldn't believe it. What about Vassar? Nope. I'm going here. First choice, early decision. What could I say? Marist College? The school IBM built. She got on campus. What else did she see? The glass, the air, the river, the aesthetic, the excellence. It's only thing she knew. All the way, what she didn't know was she was second generation mommy's Danish bow. Her grandmother's Danish bow, the aesthetic. Empty nesting, I started writing again and lecturing. And a recent quote put me back to the top of the voice of the design industry for advocacy. I've gone viral. It was at Chris Rudd, ITT, Institute of Design, Chicago. He hosts his first Stay In conference, The Future Must Be Different from the Past. I'm on the panel. And he looks at me and he says, Ms. Miller, what is your Confederate flag? What are your statues coming down? We're in the middle of Black Lives Matter, protests, the aftermath of George Floyd, the pandemic. I'm writing again, and Chris asked me the question, what is my design Confederate flag and statue? Quoting from my article, finally, I ruffled the feathers of the elite at a recent Zoom conference. The future must be different from the past. Take down the Paul Rand look, I said. It's my Confederate flag, my Confederate statue, the Helvetica flush left, rag right, grid bearing white space all around. The page was the look of the oppressor. If you were a Black designer back in the day and you wanted to be employed by one of the established elite studios, well, good luck with that. The grid system in Helvetica were the white males' design gospel. The look screamed in my memory bank. You don't belong here. Even if you can design like this and you have mommy's bow, is your aesthetic. We don't want you. And every time I see the look, I feel the oppressor on my neck. I want you to take a pledge. I want you to remember my story. I want you to become a part of the Be Equal community. I want you to make a better history, to be excellent, to be fair, to be equal. Wear your Be Equal t-shirt with authenticity. Be the difference. Take the pledge. Be the pledge. Life has a funny way. It pauses for humor. And here is your design critical thought for today. Here's your exercise with me. Think critically, listen carefully to what I'm getting ready to say. My daughter comes into my office. She says to me, she comes to visit me from Poughkeepsie. Mom, I don't drink tea or coffee. Would you like my cup? Pause. Think on these things. Mom, I don't drink tea or coffee. Would you like my cup? IBM, it's a privilege. It's your point of departure. It was a privilege that I was denied, an access I couldn't have. But it didn't take away the dream of quality of life, and that one day we all would be equal and fair and earn the badge. IBM privilege is privilege. Pass it on. Pay it forward. I have my daughter's cup now. Can you believe that? I have my daughter's cup, and I have mommy's bowl. I am an IBMer. From mainframe to blockchain, here we are. Earn your badge. Be equal. Wear your B. Be fair. IBM privilege, it is privilege. Pass it on. Pay it forward. Crystal's favorite quote is my favorite quote from Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. God bless, God keep you. Pass the privilege on. Listen, the air you breathe, the narthex, the glass, the leather, the aesthetic. I know it can be tough, but it's your point of departure for a lifestyle of excellence. Live, prosper, be equal, be fair. God bless you. God keep you. I'm going to enjoy my cup of coffee, and I'm going to eat mommy's mints and bowls and popcorn. And I think that I made it exactly in time. I hope you enjoyed that story. I've never told it to anyone. Glean and enjoy with it. I'll take some questions. And I live it's unbelievable. I live in IBM country, in the woods, mid-century. You know, what can I say? It's been all around me. And all I ever wanted to do was have a career at IBM. But we have a future, and you have a future, and just be equal.
Wow. Cheryl, thank you. Incredible story. I'm also appreciative for you for leaving 10 minutes for questions, and I know there'll be quite a few from our audience. I have one from the queue that I'd like to start with here. The audience is asking, what are some of the reasons that you found for the underrepresentation, and what are some of the solutions that IBM and companies like IBM can try?
Okay. Well, if you look to my fourth part of my article, I think that you will see a tremendous amount of answers and footnotes. I'll be writing my book from all that I could not put in my article. The history of labor after the slave trade is where we have the core of, broadly, you hear everybody talk about white supremacy and systemic racism. That's like saying, well, everybody's got cancer, and it's like, where's the tumor? Well, I discovered in archival notes, trade union notes, a lot of footnotes. I had an ally that helped me do my research for my last article, that the slave labor threatened the white man at emancipation. All of a sudden, there was competition. And it's been a chase of life, okay, for the Black community. And the slave artisan that was denied access. And so we've got systemic issues that move through the history of a young design business. Okay, so from the abolitionist movement into emancipation, the systemic racist techniques that kept Blacks out of the artisan and labor, and then, oh my God, it's just a trajectory of understanding design coming and pulling out from the trades into the unions, and the academic response of creating design thinking and education. A lot of core of this comes all the way back with the dominant community having to deal with a new body of free labor and competition that once was free. And so once you kind of understand this history and see that it's based on a lot of fear and a lot of aggression and dealing with that fear, you've got decades of systemic thought of racism that it found its way into employment practices. And New York City, I have archives and footnotes that I found from union minutes that clearly show that the Negro could not work in New York City, okay, as an artisan. And so these strategies were to keep Blacks and people of color down and out and away from. Unfortunately, when I hit the ground of New York City, we're still working with, systemic racism practices and mid-century, and there was just no access. So this is after the Civil Rights Movement. So it was difficult, but there's a history of it. And that's what has to be broken up, okay? Fair labor practices, but there was a strategy to keep the African-American slave derivative community of labor out of this business. So that's history. It's a fact, but we don't have to repeat history.
Inspiring. Thank you. Keep those questions coming in on the chat, please. Open to anyone. And I hope you've all had a chance to read those articles, which inspire questions in addition to what we've just heard from Cheryl. Cheryl, the next one that I have here for you is, what advice would you give to recruiters or to hiring managers at IBM to help find those great Black designers? Some of your writings have talked about how it could be tough to find, through traditional recruiting, to find those great Black designers. Do you have any tips for recruiters or hiring managers?
Look, the playing field, if you read the articles, the playing field is tremendous now. And with intentionality, I hate to say it, but during my era of action, affirmative action and minority recruiting and minority business vendors, these were things that were put in place to make sure that the community would be broadened. A lot of those initiatives don't exist anymore. To speak power to power, to demand it is, unfortunately, we don't always do the right thing easily. So where I'm not necessarily a proponent of these things, they worked. They got us in the workforce. Affirmative action and minority vending programs got us on the playing field. And the community and the talent is large. You have to be intentional. The community is very, very large now, and you have to be intentional. Who can you recommend? Word of mouth, career fairs. Even now in my, I think it's part two, I lift up 5 high school prep programs. I'm telling across the country, I'm telling admissions officers, these kids are prepped and ready. Go into this community to have your college fairs. Go into, with intentionality, career fairs to places where, not even HBCU, of course HBCU, but there are down right there in Austin, UT. You've got to be intentional to find competitive and be competitive. Just don't pick up folks because you have a quota. You want the best, and there are a lot of 21st century Cheryl Millers with mommy's bowl, okay, that are ready to go to the next level. So the internship programs, you just have to be intentional and look for the best in the community. The talent is there. The talent is there, but you have to be proactive with it. That's one of the things that I did do when I was practicing in New York. And once I started the trade publishing and my voice became, one of advocacy, I bonded with Roz Goldfarb Associates, and people would always ask me, do you know good designers that we could place? So I helped with recruitment while I was in New York. And, the excellence and the standards, there is a global community of people of color that can compete. And that's what you want for IBM. You want the best. You just don't want them because they're diverse. You want them talented and be able to, they're ready. There's a community that's ready. But you do have to be proactive to be forceful to identify the talent.
And I noticed in your recent articles, you've suggested some communities that perhaps recruiters could make sure that they're connected with those communities. So,
those are high school, even if you start young and reach to create internship programs and mentorship programs that are, you can walk, foundational kinds of things you can walk students through all the way through college. With intentionality, you can create programs and initiatives that get into our community and commit to a career path. Starting young is what's important.
Thank you, Cheryl. The next question here for you, and this might be our last major question. Seth asks, how do you think your experience might have been different if you were an emerging designer applying to IBM today? Based on what you know about IBM now and our reinvestment in design, what should IBM design leaders focus on to continue making things better?
The same thing that I received during our setup time, and that was, Cheryl, your story is welcome. I felt comfortable that I could tell you the truth, and you would still love me, and that that I would love you, and that I have joy in spite of the mid-century journey of this. Whatever you can do to be genuine, to embrace a new global community of diversity and mixtures, the welcoming, I hope that you passed your design critical thought, okay, about my daughter and her cup. My daughter feels welcomed, and I can see it, all right? I see it, She receives packages, she's thought after, she's, your future. She and her team are your future. And creating what I call sanctuary space, where the authenticity and being genuine to know that you're welcome will help a new community merge. And so that's what it is to wear your BT shirt, okay, to be equal, fair, and welcoming, and really mean it, really, really, really mean it. And mentors are important, and looking out for each other, and upper management looking out, and the community knows that they're being watched over. So being genuine to being welcoming and inviting is a big step. It's a very, very big step.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And I don't want to put you on the spot with this one, but I'll follow up with you afterwards. There is a lot of chat here about people wanting to share this story, even beyond IBM. The story you've told today is something that really has resonated with everyone. And please give some thought to whether or not you'd be open to us sharing your story on beequal.com or ibm.com/design. If you're comfortable with that, it's a story we want to get that message out.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well,
and at this point, however I can be an IBMer, I'll take it. You want me all over you want me all over the platform? Listen, it's always still a hope and a dream. Okay. But to be with you and to be included in this moment, I couldn't ask for more. And I just think that what was so unique in my upbringing was that I did grow up understanding very unique maternal heritage and lineage, that I would be Danish Creole, and my family would be indigenous Danish and Ghanaian, and now it's a Carnival cruise stop, U.S. Virgin Islands. And, the Scandinavian aesthetic is so much a part of my life. That it comes from, like I said, I'm Danish, but I'm Danish Creole. I'm from Danish West Indies, all right? And to have had this kind of DNA in me, it's a part of one of my lectures. I talk about my typographic and design system, and it's a part of me. And I think that's what it was that was disturbing, that so much of this design aesthetic that we do see as a part of IBM lifestyle and genre, is who I am. It's like the color of my eyes. It's like my bone structure. And I could not find a place within that system to express it. But the excellence, you see, transcended into other areas. My design firm was award winning. It's all at Stanford now. The excellence in my scholarship. So, it became nutrition. And so I used what I could of it. I had just hoped another direction. But honestly, there's a difference between having a career and leaving a legacy. I could have easily been facing retirement from IBM now if that door had been open. But I wouldn't be with you here with a lifetime legacy that lives on and on. Okay? And so life took me the way that it took me. And I'm leaving a legacy, which is far more than, it's far more a rich experience than a career vested and retired from IBM. So life made a choice for me. Cheryl, make a legacy of this. Make lemonade out of these lemons, and have joy and be grateful, and hopefully you'll change your heart and change your mind.
What incredible perspective. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story with us, Cheryl. I found it incredibly inspiring, and I can tell everyone else did too.